Welcome to this special episode of What's Next. I'm standing in for Aki Anastasiou. My name is Jan Vermeulen. I'm the editor of MyBroadband, and we have the pleasure of welcoming Changpeng Zhao of Binance, the CEO of Binance, to today's discussion. And it's an incredible pleasure to have you with us. And I think without further ado, let's get right to it. There's a lot of questions that people have about Binance, about what's happening in crypto in South Africa. And let's start with your operations here in South Africa. Can you give us an idea of how many registered South African users you've got?
So thanks for having me here. First of all, it's a great honor. I don't have actually the numbers for the South African users. We don't really divide users by platform or by country. And it's also a little bit difficult to do because there are people with South African passports living abroad or vice versa. So I don't have the exact numbers, but in South Africa, there are one other major platform that's also quite prominent. I actually don't have all the numbers in front of me.
Okay, yeah. We have our huge platform here in South Africa is by one of your rivals, DCG. It's owned by them, and yeah, they've been in the market for a while. So yeah, it's an exciting and competitive space over here. But perhaps getting into the nitty-gritties of it, the regulatory environment in South Africa, we've seen our central bank, specifically the Financial Surveillance Department, blocking citizens from using credit or debit cards to buy crypto from offshore exchanges in foreign currency like Binance. Did you notice South Africans buying less crypto on Binance as a result? And just in general, what do you make of this crackdown that seems to be linked to export controls and protecting our currency?
Yeah, to be honest, so in the blockchain, in the crypto industry, there's really not a distinction between onshore and offshore exchanges. As soon as you buy Bitcoin on any exchange, that Bitcoin stays in your wallet. If you fly to London, if you fly to New York, that Bitcoin is with you. There's really no onshore, offshore. It doesn't really matter which exchange you're using. There is a local, the local exchange you mentioned, they do have a fiat on-ramp, whereas we and every other international exchange that I know of does not have it. So, but the on-ramp allows people to use, I understand, from banks to deposit and withdraw, and then convert into crypto. And once it's in crypto, once it's in Bitcoins or BNB or other coins, there's really not a whole lot of geographic borders.
Yeah. And speaking of on-ramps and off-ramps, I think that's a very natural place to go then. Are you working on enabling an off-ramp for South Africans to bring their fiat into Binance and trade from there?
We're always kind of working on it. We're always working on hoping that, but we need to respect the local central bank regulations. If the central bank are against banks from servicing crypto exchanges, then there's not a whole lot we can do. Then, well, we can work with the central bank, try to educate them, try to convince them, etc. So we're kind of working on that front, but in many places, the banks and the central banks still have a skeptical view of the blockchain crypto world, which is understandable. When you're in an industry for a long time and something new comes up, you're always skeptical. So we are working with governments all around the world trying to change that. But South Africa might take a little bit, may take a little bit of time. I don't know.
Yeah. And to be clear, this is just with credit cards. So it's still, I was clicking around before our interview, and it seems like it's possible to buy USD on Binance using SWIFT from South Africa. I haven't tried it yet. I don't know if there's a minimum amount that's required, but it is possible for South Africans to still use Binance, even if it is via SWIFT. It's just that the credit card option was so much more convenient. And then Binance also used to offer South African Rand trading pairs. Do you know off the top of your head what caused you to disable South African Rand trading? And would you consider enabling that again?
Yeah, so well, there's quite a few things there. Number one is on the credit cards versus debit cards versus SWIFT bank transfers, and there's also other ways of what we call peer-to-peer transactions. All of those are, I think, I don't know what your situation is, but the SWIFT transfers are mostly available for European users. So I don't know if you have a European account, etc. And credit cards, we do work with both MasterCard and Visa globally to enable that. But in certain countries, including South Africa, I believe at the request of the local regulators, we turned that off. So, and also, I believe, I'm actually not sure of the details because there's so many countries in the world. And I do believe that we also removed the South African rand trading pairs at the request of regulators locally. So that was done by request. So that's, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, but that's kind of what I recollect. We do have to respect local regulations, and but if there's an exchange that do provides those trading servers, the problem in crypto is there's thousands of exchanges. So just because we're the biggest and we disable it, and there are other exchanges that provides it, so it doesn't really solve the problem. The other thing is when banks don't work with crypto exchanges, there's a form of peer-to-peer trading which happens. So that means like you deposit the crypto onto a platform, and then the buyer transfers money to you directly via banks or any other way. It could be cash, it could be something else. And then when the seller receives the cash or money, they say confirm, and then we release the crypto to the buyer. This way, the bank transfers or however method the fiat money is transferred does not go through the platform. This way, actually, there's less data on what's going on. So just by banks not working with cryptocurrency businesses doesn't really prevent people from getting crypto. So yeah, so there's many different ways. Just by blocking banks only really blocks the banks from accessing a new technology that this is new technology for money. So, and it actually makes the banks more outdated over time. So it's not a very effective way, but it causes some inconvenience for users. So users use different ways, but we do respect the local the local regulations.
Yes, the sense I'm getting from our regulator is that they want the on-ramp, the money flowing into exchanges, to be reported through our foreign exchange division, or the what's called the financial surveillance department, and so I don't know why it doesn't work with credit cards, but you know, as I said, it works through SWIFT, and crypto exchanges are allowed to operate in South Africa if they have a local bank account, it seems, and a local bank. There are a handful of local banks that still are willing to support cryptocurrency businesses in the country. Would that be something that you would consider, is opening a local South African bank account, or do the volumes in South Africa just not warrant that kind of level of effort, I want to say, to allow fiat on-ramping from South Africa?
We would love, if there are local banks willing to work with Binance to open bank accounts, we would love to do that, because that offers for the users a slightly more easier way to, it's a better user experience. It offers regulators much more clarity, much more data into what exactly is flowing to Binance, what is flowing out, etc. So that data becomes transparent. Whereas today, people trade using cash, using peer-to-peer bank transfers. That data is actually very unclear to regulators. We actually, yeah, so the best way for regulatory agencies, like what you mentioned, is the FX monitoring board. The best way for them to have that control is to allow banks working with cryptocurrency exchanges. And the best way to do that is issue licenses. Once you issue licenses to crypto exchanges, you can demand data. You can, you know, by blocking them, actually, pushes the crypto exchanges out of the system, that you actually have less data. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, but we're in multiple countries, we're seeing this moving this way. And lastly, South Africa is a very important market. It's one of the most important markets in Africa. It is one of the strongest economies in Africa. So it's obviously a very important market.
And on the issue of licenses, one of the top guys at our central bank recently said it's going to take 12 or 18 months to sort out the regulations in South Africa. One of the things that they are working on is a licensing regime. Is 12 to 18 months, does that sound reasonable, or is that too slow?
It's definitely not the fastest. We have worked with governments that move much, much faster, but it's also reasonable to some extent. 18 months in government terms is not that long. But I'll give you an example for like Dubai, where I'm in right now. Last year in November, I came here, met with the senior government officials. They say they want to embrace this industry, and said, well, we're more than happy to help. So we entered into the MOU in November. And then we formed a joint task force to help Dubai draft the crypto regulatory framework. By January, we had a couple of drafts. By February, the Crown Prince of Dubai signed that into law. So that was established. And also by February, we got a license. And by March, 5 other crypto exchanges got licenses in Dubai. So you could, that was in the span of 3-4 months. You could move fast. It's not a brand new thing now. It's not like this is the first, it's not like the first country coming up with regulatory framework for crypto. So there are many examples to study. Of course, every country has their own uniqueness, their own worries. Sounds like South Africa is quite worried about foreign capital flowing out of the country, which is common in many countries. So yeah, so 18 months. Is a bit long. It's not the longest. It's not the shortest. So, but if needed be, we'll be very happy to help to move that faster. We have quite a lot of experience working with multiple governments around the world now.
And one of the concerns in South Africa, I think that our regulators are grappling with is we've been flagged for greylisting by the Financial Action Task Force, and so they want to make sure that whatever they do is not going to make that worse. So I think that's a major concern as well.
In the United States, banks work very closely with cryptocurrency exchanges. In the US, Binance US can deduct money from users' bank accounts automatically each month. Coinbase can do that too through the protocol called ACH. So France, Binance have a license. Italy, Binance have a license. So it's not the gray list. Just because banks work with crypto businesses doesn't mean the country get on the gray list. Those are two separate things. Some people sometimes have confusions about that, but some of the most developed countries are doing this already. So it's not something new. I just wanted to point that out.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it's I think important to emphasize. Binance has had direct interactions with one of our regulators, as far as I could tell, the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, which asked you to block South Africans from margin trading on the platform. So we no longer have access to margins, futures, derivatives trading on Binance at all. And you've already alluded to this, but if a separate license were available to offer derivatives trading, would you apply for one? And what were your interactions like with our local regulator? Were they generally positive?
From everything I know, it was generally positive. We did have I was not directly involved, but gathering from the feedback I got from our team is, look, we got a request, we complied, and they asked us to, as you said, to block access to margin products, to futures products. I believe we complied very swiftly. We're not in the business. We cannot fight or go against regulators. That just doesn't work. So we need to observe those local rules very carefully. At the same time, we do try to push them. So hey, look at all these other countries that are doing this wonderful things, and they're really not a whole lot of risk. Margin, anything with leverage is more risky for retail consumers. So every regulator have to make decisions based on the local condition, like the education level, the financial literacy. So there are different concerns in different parts of the world, and we understand that. And we want to work with regulators very closely to further improve education and also transparency and clarity. So all of those things are important. But I think so far, I believe our relationship has been pretty good.
Oh, that's good news. Just more broadly, what are some of Binance's plans for South Africa and the African continent as a whole?
I think Africa has some really interesting potentials. Number one is it's a large population. It's 1.2 billion people, and honestly, it's one of the less developed continents. So the financial power for this 1.2 billion people are relatively low. We really the way to improve that is not to limit them. Is not to limit them access to new technologies. The way to improve that is to provide financial access, and this is a new technology for money. This is a new technology for financial services, for financial products. So it is very important to bring them onto this new industry and this new technology, and proper control way. Africa have some really interesting advantages, like the low penetration of banks in Africa overall. I think the overall is probably about somewhere between 10 to 20% banking penetration. So that means 80% of the population don't have bank accounts. And for them to get banks, etc., many banks work in a physical branch. Africa is a very large continent. So now all they need is a smartphone, and they can access the blockchain, DeFi products, and they can use payments, etc. So Africa, because of a less traditional financial infrastructure, it's actually easier for them to what we call leapfrog. So they can bypass that and go there. Like it's like, look, Africa probably also have low land phone penetration, but they can go straight to mobile. To smartphones, they can do that here too. So, but we do need two fundamental infrastructures to be in place: internet and smartphones. So today in Africa, the smartphone penetration is increasing, which is also good. So but Africa can save all the costs of establishing traditional banks and stuff like that, and go directly into this new technology, and the banks can adopt this new technology too. So there's some really interesting dynamics here. I do believe by allowing Africa's direct access to new financial tools is actually very beneficial for them.
And here, that top guy at our central bank that I was speaking about earlier is Kiba Naidu is his name. Said, and I'm paraphrasing a little here, but he said essentially South Africa doesn't need blockchain technology if you compare us to the rest of the continent, because we have a mature and advanced national payment system. Countries like the Central African Republic have adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. They don't have the same robust systems we do. Do you see lots of countries that kind of think in that vein, that go, digital ledger technologies don't have anything to offer us? And what can crypto offer countries that already have strong financial systems like ours?
Sure. Yeah. So we do see people with that type of thinking still, and I think it just shows that the industry is quite still at an early stage. There's a few things there. Number one is, like, I don't know if there's a video clip with Bill Gates interviewing with Larry show. Larry was making fun of him in 1995, saying, well, why do we need the internet? We already have radio, we already have TV, we have magazines. What's the point of internet? And Bill Gates was trying to explain the use cases. So guess what? 20 years later, we have internet radio, we have internet TV, we have internet social media, and a bunch of other things. So if internet was just a new technology for transferring information, the blockchain is just a new technology for transferring value. That's all it is. But with the internet, we can build so much stuff out of it. There's a whole ecosystem built out of it. A blockchain is going to do that as well for money. So, and blockchain is going to have a higher impact because this technology deals with value transfer, where information is just or internet is just dealing with information transfer. Two very different things. And what are the direct benefits for countries? Well, before I get into that, South Africa is one of the leaders in Africa. When you're a leader in Africa, comparing to the rest of the countries in Africa, is less. Of course, you're always going to look good. But how about compared to New York? How about compared to Japan? How about compared to Singapore? When you compare to this developed countries, where is South Africa or where is Africa overall? You know, you can always pick guys who are weaker than you compared to them. You can also pick guys who are more developed or stronger than you and try to improve yourself. And what are the benefits for this technology? There's many more to come, but today is one of the easiest tools for either entrepreneurs or existing businesses to raise money. Every single government I've met want to attract foreign direct investments. They want to bring money into the country. That's good for economy. Using blockchain fundraising, ICOs, IEOs. This is one of the best ways for entrepreneurs to raise money globally. So you can have a small entrepreneur team in South Africa. If they have a good idea, good product, and some reputation, they can easily raise 10, 20 million US dollars within a matter of weeks or days. And guess what? That money gets spent. That money will be used to hire people. That money, they will create jobs in the local economy. And it also, on top of that, it developed a local talent pool, which is important for this future industry. So that's just one use case, what I call blockchain global fundraising. Artists are now able to sell their art globally using blockchain technologies, NFTs, non-fungible tokens. And again, I've spoken with countless artists. They say they get 10x more for their art when they use NFTs. So I know an artist here in Dubai. He normally sells art for like $10,000 a piece, but using NFTs, he gets $100,000 a piece. Guess what? Now he's exclusively in NFTs. Why would he do it any other way? And again, NFTs, they're sold to people all over the world. It's not just, it's not just in Dubai. So now he's bringing the money from all over the world into the local economy. Now he buys a house here. He spends money here. So all of these things are very important. And there are many other things that we haven't even explored. It is a much cheaper way to pay. It is a much cheaper way to transact. It's just a newer technology. Why would you want to consume? If it's cheaper, your consumers save money. And when your consumers save money, and if you use cheaper technologies, you will have stronger industries, you will have more commerce. That's good for the economy. So all of these things are very important. If you think about which country doesn't have internet? Well, there's South Africa, there's North Korea probably. And guess how well the economy is doing there. So not ignoring new technologies is extremely dangerous. It's extremely potentially very disastrous for economies. And every country wants economy. So, and also economic growth has to be exponential. So you have to, when you become a leader, you have to grow more. You have to adopt a new technology that can offer you exponential growth. There isn't that many other industries today, more than blockchain, more than cryptocurrencies, that can offer that type of growth. So for example, Japan is a very developed economy. If you look at Tokyo, how many buildings, it's a very, very established economy. Guess what? They are now embracing blockchain because they understand that for their economy to grow from that scale, they need new technologies. So yeah, I think obviously my view is one view, not guaranteed to be right or wrong, but different people have different views. I view that technology is extremely important for economic growth.
Yes, thank you for that. I want to explore the double-edged sword of this a little bit. It's a little bit philosophical, but you've raised the internet as an example here, and I think that's an interesting one to look at. Oh, and before that, I wanted to say yes, the clip that you're referring to is Dave Letterman making fun of
David Letterman,
of Bill Gates.
A big new thing.
Yeah, but it's easy to criticize something you don't fully understand, which is my position here.
Go ahead.
But I can remember a couple of months ago, there was like a big breakthrough announcement that on the internet or on some computer deal, they were going to broadcast a baseball game. You could listen to a baseball game on your computer. And I just thought to myself, does radio ring a bell? You know what I
mean? It's just there's a difference.
There is a difference.
It's not a huge difference.
What is the difference?
But you can listen to the baseball game whenever you want.
All right.
Too.
Oh, I see. So it's stored in one of your memory deals,
exactly.
And then you can come back a year later.
Thing you talked about earlier.
Yeah. Do tape recorders ring a bell?
But one of the criticisms leveled at crypto is that it enables illegal activity and ransomware attacks. So you've already compared it to something like the internet. Do you think it's fair to compare it to the internet in that respect as well, in terms of benefits and drawbacks? So on the one hand, the internet democratizes access to information, it democratizes publishing, it lets us communicate cheaply over vast distances. But on the other hand, it also lets spammers and scammers operate at a massive scale, and also enables much worse things like revenge porn. So the question becomes, is the trade-off worth it?
Oh yeah, so absolutely. So I think the trade-off's absolutely worth it. We live in a world. I believe the positive forces always trump the negative forces, and as a species, we will ensure that happens. And also, just because some illicit activity happens in using one tool, it doesn't mean that tool is bad. There's way more illicit activities happening with U.S. dollars. Is the U.S. dollar bad? There's probably still quite a significant number of illicit activities that happens with the South African rand, and is that bad? So you gotta separate the tool. You can use a hammer to do work, or you can use a hammer to hit somebody. It's not the hammer's fault. So there are we need to differentiate that, and also there's a misconception that there's more illicit activity in crypto. That's completely not true anymore. And this data, there's published reports in cryptocurrencies today, there's less than 0.1% of transactions are associated with illicit activities, whereas in traditional financial fiat, cash, etc., that's the UN, the United Nations estimates up to 5%. So it's 5% versus 0.1%. So it's like 50x less likely to happen in crypto. Because why? Because crypto is very traceable. The blockchain is public. Give you another example, the Bitfinex hackers. Bitfinex is a crypto exchange that got hacked in 2016 for billions of dollars. The hackers held on to the money, didn't use it for 6 years. In 2022, early this year, in February, they used it. Within 1 week, they got caught, and it happened to be a couple in New York. So it's called Bitfinex hack. The law enforcement around the world are increasingly good at it. At tracking the blockchain, and also third-party big data analysis tools are very good at it now. Also, because the blockchain is permanent and public, we can use the data that we have today to analyze transactions from 2 years ago, from 5 years ago. So you can't change it, you can't fake it, you can't erase it. So fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your view, the terrorists, the illicit players also figured this out. They don't use blockchain for this anymore. They don't use blockchain for transactions anymore. They use cash. So that's a complete misconception that doesn't carry in the early days. Blockchain. So I don't think it's an issue for people who understand this. It's a misconception.
So based on the data that you've cited for law enforcement and for governments who want to crack down on crime by attacking the money supply that crime uses, it would in fact be more effective to try and move the world off cash than to try and stand in the way of crypto.
Yeah. So and we're seeing that the United States law enforcement, the Canadian law enforcement, even the Brazil law enforcement, our forensics division gets more requests from law enforcement for education, for seminars from us, from all over the world. Like we have 500 requests. We can only service like, I don't know, a few a month. So the law enforcement want this training now. So they understand.
You recently visited several African countries. There's a video of you on YouTube meeting the president of Cote d'Ivoire. Could you talk about what you saw in your visits and what was discussed?
Yeah. So when I visited Cote d'Ivoire, I met with the president of Cote d'Ivoire, and Cote d'Ivoire is one of the more developed countries in West Africa. They look towards France quite a lot, right? So now France had given Binance a license, so they went there and we talked about how this technology will help the economy. Very similar conversation to what we're having now, but just with the president directly, and also with the vice president, the Ministry of Finance, the General Secretary General. So they want to embrace this technology now. So the attitudes completely change. Now, once they understand what this technology can do, they want to embrace it. And there's also discussions about like, hey, why can Binance commit to establish a headquarters in this country, that country? So we're getting invited into many countries now. So I think the tone is really changing. So it's very positive. I also visited Senegal. I also visited Morocco, or similar type of conversations.
Okay, exciting news. Can you say when you might be coming down to South Africa?
I'm not sure yet. My travel schedule was like, I actually traveled to about 25 countries, and 21 of them are new countries. I think, well, some number of them are new countries. And then, so yeah, whenever the schedule permits, I'll travel. I do intend to spend quite a bit of time in every continent. And South Africa, I have not been ever yet. It's on my bucket list. I'll definitely go there.
Yeah, we would be happy to welcome you.
Absolutely.
I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the other tech that Binance works on, BNB Chain in particular. But first, from the South African perspective, do you have a sense of how many South Africans use or have used BNB Chain? Looking at, for example, who's buying the BNB token on Binance centralized exchange and then moving it over onto the smart contract platform, and more broadly, how many Africans are on the platform?
I don't have that data on top of my head. Again, I think Africa, actually, we have decent number of users, but the transaction volume is low. So I think that also is in correlation with the earning power of the population. I actually don't think we have data on the BNB Chain stuff because that's a public blockchain. There's really not a whole lot of data tracking though going on there. But I can ask our team to give you some more detailed data, but I don't have it on top of my head.
Okay, yeah, it'd be interesting to find out if there is data like that.
Yeah, the other thing from my conversations with our team, what I learned is our team tells me that the African users, they're not active traders. They don't like really buy and sell. What they are more interested in are earnings products. You deposit some BNB or some BTC and you get an interest rate on top of that. You earn or you stake, yield farming. Those things are much more popular in Africa. This is just anecdotal feedback I got from our team. I don't have the country numbers on top of my head because there's 200 countries. It's kind of hard to remember.
Yeah, I can imagine. And while we're speaking about earning products and holding your tokens on an exchange, this is a little bit out of order. I wanted to talk about new users a bit later, but while we're talking about it, yeah, we've seen some fairly concerning news out of platforms like Celsius, which also pitched itself as a custodian. What are some of the dangers associated with holding your tokens on an exchange? Would you recommend that people hold their tokens on an exchange like Binance for those earning opportunities? Are they safe? And how does one manage the risks? Because everybody thought Celsius was safe. What kind of assurances are there for those customers that are, as you say, using a platform like Binance for yield farming, for staking, for interest earning products?
Sure. Yeah. So there are many different type of platforms, and even for the one type, there are many different players. So just because one goes down doesn't mean the whole category is bad. And also, just because one business goes down doesn't mean the other businesses are bad. So just because one internet company fails doesn't mean the other internet company is bad. There are some problems in this, especially lending, yield generating industry. There are companies who just say, "Hey, deposit money to us, and we will guarantee you a certain return, and then we're just going to lend that money to somebody else, and the money leaves the platform." And when that somebody else, like Luna, 3 Arrows, when they go, Celsius give a lot of money to 3 Arrow, and when 3 Arrow went down, they don't get the money back. Guess what? The users they don't have money to give back to the users. That's a fairly dangerous business model, and that business model, the guys don't do any value add. Like they're not really, they take your money and they give to somebody else to generate the yield. That's not a very good business model, in my opinion. could be wrong. There are other platforms, like for example, Binance. When you deposit onto Binance, Binance use DeFi, use a blockchain native staking returns. So we diversify into multiple DeFi platforms, which are much more open, much more transparent. And also Binance, when you we also have a margin product, which margins the people who trade on margins basically have to borrow coins from somewhere, and they pay interest on that. And the money does not leave the platform. So when the people trade on margin, our system does the liquidations if necessary. So our system manages the risks. The money doesn't leave the platform. So the margin traders typically will pay, I don't know, somewhere between 8 to 10 to 12% on interest rate for the amount they borrow. Guess who do they borrow from? They borrow from the guys who are also on our platform that want to lend. And then so this way the money stays on one platform. It is a logical and is a very sensible, it's a complete closed loop business model. So the risk there is much smaller. But talking about risk though, centralized exchanges do have risks. There's also many centralized exchanges that goes down, that runs away with people's money. So there's a different type of risk. And then also centralized exchanges could get hacked. So no business is risk-free. But the larger businesses typically are slightly safer. For Binance, because of the scale, we invest hundreds of millions, and actually we invest billions of dollars now into security. We hire the best security experts from all around the world, and we have this infrastructure to do it. And the scale for based on our user numbers, we can do it at the scale makes sense. Whereas if you use a smaller platform, is a brand new platform with a couple thousand users on there, they're probably only spending a couple $1,000s or a couple $100,000 on security. They will not have quite the same level of security. So, but it's not to say that Binance doesn't have risks. We have risks. We're also one of the most targeted targets by hackers. So, but at the same time, we're more tested. So there are different levels of risks. So you do need to evaluate it very carefully. Nothing is risk-free. But at Binance, I think we spend a lot of effort trying to manage those risks, where some of the other players may have not done such a thorough job. So lastly, on the centralized exchange, for any business, there's business risk. If the business doesn't make sense, if the business is losing money, it's not profitable, you actually want to use a profitable platform because you want the platform to be sustainable. If the business model doesn't make sense to you, then that's also a risk. Business that doesn't make money is also a risk. We also see a lot of circular lending. So one guy says, okay, I'm going to invest in you, and then I'm going to take a loan out of you, and then I'm going to give it to somebody else. Somebody will give it back to. Those kind of things gets very messy. So stay away from platforms that do that is my recommendation. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what was unfortunate about this situation is it wasn't necessarily transparent or very clear to people what some of these custodians were doing with their money, and the Terra collapse in particular. As someone who was quite invested and bullish on Terra, I thought that the anchor earnings were going. We're perhaps going to, places like Magic Internet Money and stuff, seeing how many institutional investors were milking Anchor for the 20% yield and are now going bust as a result of that, was actually quite interesting to see. I think it's a lesson in terms of the transparency required from how these custodians generate their yield.
Absolutely. So actually, one of the telltale risk signs is a high yield guaranteed for a very long time. Mm-hmm. You can do high yield for a short period of time to attract users, but you can't do like 20% forever. Very few no business in history were able to sustain that. So if you go for that, then it's eventually going to fail. Yeah. Yeah. Then it's just a game of, do you get out just in time before that or not? It's too risky. With not enough information, if you cannot see inside the operation, then don't do it.
Yeah, and I mean, if the strategy is get out before it fails, then that's how people approach Ponzi's. That's not exactly good finance.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I want to circle back. We were talking about BNB Chain before we were on this train of thought. You've described BNB Chain as bigger than Binance. What does that mean?
I think today, most people are more comfortable using a centralized exchange because they're more comfortable using a email password, and if they lose it, they can call customer support. That's just more natural to people. But in the future, when we develop technologies that make it easy for people to hold crypto on their own. Today, most people cannot hold the private key safely on their own. They have to do secure backups. They have to distribute it in different geographic locations. If they lose the device, they need to have a way to restore it. If they eventually are not available, not around, everybody dies. How do they pass it to their kids, etc.? Most of those solutions are not, we don't have very easy to use solutions for those problems. There are solutions, but they're just very clunky. So I think as the industry matures, as we develop more tools to make those type of things easy, then people can, a everyday average person, not a techie, like a non-tech person, can hold large amounts of crypto in their own wallet securely. People are going to move more towards the DeFi space. So everything will be done more natively on the blockchain. So I think that will happen. I just don't know when. It's just a matter of time, though. It may be 5 years, it may be 10 years, it may be 20 years. But when that happens, the DeFi industry will get bigger than the centralized ones, which is fine. So that's why we're investing very heavily in the DeFi world. We invest in other projects, we fund developers, we sponsor them. We just want to see this technology evolve. So I think the long future, 20 years from now, people will be using the blockchain a lot more natively, and a lot less with the centralized exchanges.
And while we're on that topic, I mean, would you say that it's accurate that most people who buy crypto, including BNB, are just speculating on the price? And what could people be doing with their crypto on a smart contracting platform like BNB Chain, other than just hoping for the price to go up?
Sure. Yeah. So today, especially when we look at Binance or a centralized exchange, well, today, if you look at NASDAQ, 90% of people there are speculators. They're only there for trying to trade and make money. Very few are shareholders. Shareholders only probably less than 10% of the active traders. So, that's also the same when you look at a crypto exchange. Of course, the most active users on our platform are active traders. But if you look at the BNB ecosystem, if you look at the BNB chain, there are a number of use cases now. So, well, again, blockchain fundraising, people using ICOs, IEOs, IDOs, however you call it. People are selling, people are issuing NFTs, creating NFTs. People are participating in DeFi products that generates yields. Actually, I forgot to mention the DeFi products on the blockchain is actually much safer, but there are rug pulls, there are smart contract exploits as well. So everything have different risk profiles. So and on the blockchain now, we're seeing much more interesting use cases right now. So because we have NFTs now stadiums want to NFT everything. They want to NFT the seats, the bricks, everything. Will that work or not? We don't know yet. There's fan tokens, there's metaverse. So there's many different things being built. And now there's soulbound tokens. There's many different new applications being built. Granted, most of them are still small right now, but that's how the internet was built as well. Many of the internet platforms were very small at the beginning, and 20 years later, some of them got really big. Many of them disappeared. But a number of the most valuable companies in the world today are internet companies.
Mm-hmm. And one of the big debates when it comes to smart contracting platforms is, centralized versus decentralized. How decentralized is a platform really? And there's all kinds of analysis that goes into that on an individual project level, even, looking at the distribution of tokens amongst wallets. And we've seen, for example, Solana shut down its whole blockchain a couple of times now. And you'll have, I guess, Ethereum maxis be quite vocal about how much more decentralized Ethereum is compared to other smart contracting blockchains. And I know BNB Chain has received some criticism for the level of decentralization. How do you approach that debate, and and how decentralized is BNB Chain really?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of different concepts there. Number one is decentralization and centralization is a gradient scale. It's not a black and white thing. So many people have a very simplistic view based on one metric that if you meet this metric is decentralized, otherwise it's not. That's usually not true. So some people go by well, if you can hold your own private keys, it's decentralized. Otherwise, it's centralized. Well, guess what? Then Ethereum BNB, you can hold your own private keys. Some people look at the miners. Guess what? The Bitcoin miners are pretty centralized. The top two miners control more than 51% of the hash power. But if you look at funders, well, Bitcoin is generally the most decentralized one. We can't even find the funder. Whereas even you look at Ethereum, if you look at BNB, if you look at most other projects, you can still identify the funder. Vitalik is much more involved in the project in Ethereum technical designs, etc. So he has a very large influence on how things will go. So is that decentralized? Is that centralized or not? Yeah, it's a level of centralization. For me, I'm actually much less involved in BNB chain development, so that actually makes it more decentralized in a way. But again, so there's many different matrices to measure this. So it's not a black and white thing. On different aspects, different blockchains exert different ratios. You can look at number of nodes. You can look at the coin distribution. Dogecoin, 30% of Dogecoin sits in one address. Is that decentralized or not? So there's many different ways to look at it. The second aspect is decentralization is just a means to an end. Decentralization protects, generally means it's more equal, more distributed, but it doesn't always guarantee it. So even if you look at Bitcoin, the large holders hold a lot of, it doesn't mean that the Bitcoin distribution is equal. And also decentralization is a means to get into more freedom, less fees, easy to use, and secure. So if it, at the end of the day, most average people, most everyday people do not care about whether it's decentralized or not. They care about, can I transfer this fund to somebody that I want to transfer to easily? Do I need to go through a very complicated approval process, or can I just send? Assuming that it's legit, it's after tax money, everything. Why should I go through all this process? So the ease of use, the freedom, the security, and fees, low fees, all of those matter. For 90-something% of the population, they don't care if it's centralized or decentralized as long as it's secure. So that debate, I think, is meaningful to have, but it's not the end goal. The end goal is to increase freedom, increase ease of use, so increase lower fees. So that's what we focus on. But I do think given the technology allows more decentralization, that the trend to achieve some of those goals will be through decentralization over time. So I do think decentralization is important. But at the same time, today, if you ask, if 99% of the population, if you ask them to install a decentralized wallet, they don't even know what to do. When you ask them to go to a platform, that email, password, login, they know what to do. And so through a centralized platform, we can actually increase adoption into crypto. So we're kind of going step by step instead of one big giant leap. So the different approaches, and different people try different approaches. And for us, we think that this incremental step approach is important. And I don't think that centralized solutions are the best, but today is what most people prefer. So we provide multiple solutions for people to choose. We have centralized solutions. We have centralized solutions, Binance.com, a whole bunch of other products, decentralized solutions like Trust Wallet, BNB Chain, etc. So we provide both choices. So I usually don't get bogged down into debates, philosophical debates about terms, what things mean. The most important thing is, what do people want to use? Give that to them.
And I wanted to circle back a little bit on our discussion regarding what's happened with Terra and so on, and it ties in with BNB Chain, because people were caught off guard by a top 10 or even top 5 market cap project like Terra just going to zero, especially how fast it went to zero. Is it fair to say that no crypto project is safe? Could any token go to zero? It doesn't matter, where it ranks on CoinMarketCap. Could Ethereum, could Bitcoin, or could BNB even go to zero like that?
I would agree with that. And I would also expand that nothing is safe. No company is safe. No stock is safe. We have seen stock crash. They're very reputable companies. They're very strong companies like Netflix. Their stock is down 70%. And Chinese stocks, if you look at them, it's a bloodbath. So nothing is 100% safe. There's risks in everything. Any project, anything could fail. If Earth gets hit by a meteoroid, everything goes away. So of course, so we need to assess the level of risk and the and what you can tolerate. Terra was unexpected, to say the least, and but hindsight is much clearer. Once we look at hindsight, Terra USD got grow there because of inorganic growth, incentive-driven growth, a lot of incentive to attract, and then it was based on the way that UST was based on collateral for Luna, both was really the same project. So when one goes down, the other also goes down. Nobody pointed that out. And also in the design, they think that by printing more Luna, the Luna market cap is going to grow. So when there's not enough Luna, then they just print more. That's completely flawed, right? You don't create value by printing more money. Just dilutes everything else that was there before. So it was hindsight is very clear, but no one actually many people did point out those issues, but it wasn't clear to the mass population until that happened. So it's a very expensive learning process. But guess what? We're in a new industry. We gotta learn through. We will have to do some hard learning, like through hard lessons.
And on that note, is there some good news in the space that's getting lost in the noise of all this bad news?
Absolutely. So actually, look, compared to a year ago when Bitcoin were like 68,000, today actually the industry is much healthier, much cleaner. There's much less fluffy stuff. There's much less arrogance. Now the projects, there are many projects that are still going. And those projects are much more humbler. They're much down to earth. They have reasonable valuations. It's much easier to find projects to invest in today than a year ago. A year ago, the valuations were too crazy. We couldn't find companies to invest in. And this is why we launched Binance Labs. We're now making a big push to invest in the industry now. We think this is the best time to invest. But this is for, again, I don't want this to be investment advice, but that's what we think. So a correction is not necessarily bad for the industry. Before, the industry was built on, there was too much air in the industry. Now, like everything's more solid. So and if through every correction, every failure, every failed project, we learn. So we now learn to how do we evaluate some of the projects, what kind of risks they are in lending, in loan, in stablecoin projects. So we learn from experience. So and also for the stronger players that stay today and that can survive, and that usually the guys who can survive actually thrive, because now there's less competition, there's more consolidation. It's actually there's more opportunity for the guys who can survive.
And you announced that your co-founder Yi will take over as head of Binance Labs. What is your plan for Labs? What kind of projects are you looking at investing in?
Yeah, so when we started Binance Labs 4 years ago, it was really an experiment. So that's why we didn't take external money. We were just using our own money to invest. I wasn't sure if it was going to make money or not. But it turns out that over the last 3-4 years, we invested a couple $100 million, depending on what price you use to calculate them. Now it's a $7 billion portfolio. And when Bitcoin was like 68,000, it was much higher. So even at the current market cap, even in the current market, the market valuation is $7 billion plus. So now we this works. We want to do more. We now have a lot more dry powder to do more. So we want to much more actively invest in the space, but both inside the crypto space, anything like infrastructure, applications, etc. But we're also venturing out a little bit into traditional industries. This is why we were involved in the Forbes deal, in the Twitter deal, 500 million, Forbes was 200 million. Unfortunately, most of the deals kind of got stuck. But we want to invest in a couple for each traditional industry sector. We want to pick 1 or 2 companies, invest in them, help them to bring into the crypto Web3 world. And I believe very strongly that by doing that, we will give them additional business models. We'll give them additional funding models that will make them stronger. And when they become stronger, guess what their competitors have to do? That they will have to follow. And then that industry gets into crypto. And this way, the crypto industry grows. And then our main business today, when the crypto industry grows, we benefit. So we take a much longer term view in how to develop this economy now. So and investment is a key aspect on that. So now we task basically the one of the key co-founders to lead this. Before it was always, you know, it was kind of a smaller project. Now we're making a top tier project.
And are you willing to name names of any particular companies that you're looking at?
Well, I can't name names of the companies we're looking at. We can only announce after we make announcements for certain deals that we want to make public. But actually, most of our investments are actually private. Like we actually don't announce them.
Okay. Yeah, I had to try. So,
I mean, basically, the main reason is when we announce it, it's usually we want to be very careful. Many people follow us for investments. Once we say, hey, we're looking at this project, every other investor, including some retail investors, wants to get in, and we want to be careful. It's okay for us to lose our own money, but we don't want other people following us losing money. So this is why we are very careful with announcing what we invest in.
Yeah, ape follows ape, as they say in the crypto industry. One last question, if you'll indulge me. I know that your time is limited. We have a local South African DeFi celebrity, but he's actually an international DeFi celebrity. He just happens to be South African. His name is Andre Cronje. And in an interview he gave before he exited the space, he warned that crypto is in danger of repeating the mistakes of traditional finance. He said in his own unique way, dudes in suits are just becoming dudes in hoodies. Do you agree with that? And how do we prevent DeFi from just being traditional finance with extra steps?
I mean, there's always a certain element of truth to a generic saying like that. There's always, you know, we're not completely avoiding all the mistakes or all the issues in traditional industries. So in the traditional industries, you have, you know, loans, any loan business, there's a high risk for failure. That was repeated in crypto. Crypto, blockchain, Web3 doesn't eliminate all problems that we have in financial industries. It's not a magic pill. It's not a magic cure. It is much better, in my opinion, than the traditional technologies. Much cheaper, much faster, much more democratic, much more decentralized than the traditional ones. But we don't solve all problems. And people's greed, there are scammers in traditional industries. There are scammers in crypto. There are bad players in traditional industries. There are bad players here. There are good players in traditional industries too. And there are good players here. So it's not black and white. We are very likely to repeat many of the mistakes too, but it's a learning process. In my view, it's an iterative learning process. It's not like we're going to become perfect in one shot. It's not possible. So when somebody says that, there's always an element of truth to that. We shouldn't have a too black and white view of the world. We should look at the world as it really is, which is a grayscale, and we need to figure out what's risky, what's not risky, and learn how to avoid it.
CZ, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure the South African community also appreciates the insight that you've given into Binance's operations, what your plans are for South Africa, for the continent as a whole. We look forward to hosting you one day, hopefully soon, and see you again soon.
Thank you, Jan. Thanks for inviting me, and it's an honor and a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much.
And you.